Good morning, and thank you for joining e-commerce merchandising using CGI and AI to increase conversion and boost your bottom line with Alex Divagon, co-founder and CEO of Infinite. As a reminder, if you have any questions during the conversation, to please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. Now, here's your host, Deborah Weinswig, CEO and founder of Coresight Research.
Hello, everyone. Hope you are having a wonderful day. And we are aiming to cover a few things today, and those include laying out how traditional photography as a visual merchandising method and challenges brands and retailers face with it. We're then going to move on to introduce the idea of a modern Web3 supply chain, which we're also talking about at Shop Talk. So hope to see all of you there at the end of the day on Tuesday, where we will certainly be highlighting some of what we're talking about today as well. And then also, how can AI multiply the effects of CGI to really optimize brands and retailers' ways of producing and managing product visuals. So very excited. Alex, thank you for joining us. I think this has been, as you know, when I was at Li & Fung, this is an area I spent a lot of time in. And so to see it really kind of come to life in a whole new way, where we're seeing much more adoption, but also such great impact. Very excited to have this conversation. So thank you so much. So
yeah, thank you, Deborah, for having me. And it's great to be here. Hi, everyone.
Hello. So as we can see, right, I still remember when I was an analyst covering, let's just say a luxury department store, and they explained the cost and the amount of work it took to get product onto the website. And I'm like, this can't really be how this works, right? Like, that's just, right, we're in e-commerce, right? This is fast, it's inexpensive. And so I went and I saw they had like an entire studio where they photographed things. And then they talked about, right, the labor cost and materials and everything. And so, you know, as we think about that, Alex, kind of like where we've been and where we're going. And, you know, this, I think we had, you know, the data shows almost a little over 2/3 of brands and retailers really struggle with managing and producing product visuals. And there was another project we worked on in the grocery space, and we couldn't even locate the proper visuals. So we ended up creating them ourselves at Coresight, which was a whole different experience. So, I mean, I've actually done it myself, and we actually utilize those, you know, those PDPs for the website. So, you know, as brands and retailers are kind of thinking about what's the path ahead, right? We have all these amazing new solutions. You know, what are the challenges that your clients face when they kind of approach Infinite, and what are maybe some of the unexpected, I'd say, problems it solves?
Yeah, very, very interesting question. So historically, you know, retailers had two approaches to create, you know, product visual content for their website or other outputs. The first one was like just relying on suppliers, you know, visual benefit. It's free. Problem is it's inconsistent. It's not customized to their brand. So they understood, like, for the last 10 years, that creating their own, you know, merchandising visual content for their product is important for their brand experience. So to your point, they started powering, you know, internal photo studios that were like extremely costly, extremely heavy logistics. You know, just, you know, to mention in COVID, they were powering that, but, you know, from the day to another, they couldn't ship products, so they couldn't shoot, they couldn't have anything online, so they were like stuck. It's people intensive, it's costly, it's difficult to scale. So this approach is very hard. And today they're kind of stuck in the middle between like very expensive, unscalable photo studio, hard to manage, hard to forecast, hard to predict. Some of our customers will say, hey, Alex, when we come to you because we have 60% of our inventory without enough visual for the PDP, for their product detail page. So they're stuck with this, and they're stuck with, like, you know, increasing, you know, consumers' expectation for better brand experiences. So these are the hurdles you know, that our customers are facing now, which are pushing them to other solution like CGI.
So can I ask another question as a derivative of that? You know, if we think about the challenges that many of these retailers face in terms of getting their PDPs, you know, we oftentimes see very few, right? So we actually don't know what we're buying. I often look at ingredients, right? And there's a picture of the front of the box and the back of the box, but the ingredients are on the side, so you don't actually get to see the ingredients. And so we all make purchasing mistakes, right? And there's a cost to that, not just to the retailer if we return it, but to the environment as well. So how do you think about the fact that, you know, because of the expense, retailers haven't created enough PDPs, there isn't enough information for consumers, and that actually has created right, an entire flywheel, if you will, of returns.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, the statistics shows that there is a direct correlation between the percentage of return and like the numbers of visual you have on the PDP. The reason is pretty simple: is that when you shop online, the only touch point you have with the product is the visual. So it's very important that you have a complete and immersive experience for the shopper to see the product, to not be deceived, and therefore not to return the product. So and back to the question is like the difficulty for our customers, the retailers and the brands to create enough photographic pictures for all their products, which is they have large catalog, mean that they decrease the numbers of image per product to be able to be sure that they have every product online, but they can abandon like, completeness of visual merchandising for like a number of visual for every single product, which certainly enable them to sell online, but increase the rate of return. And by the way, I'm pretty sure you know, and much better than me, but in China, they have many more visual per PDP, and they have a much lower rate of return. So there is a direct correlation, which now pushes the retailers and brands to have more visuals on the PDP, better immersive experience, to basically at the end of the day, not even to induce the purchase, but to avoid deception and therefore avoid one of the biggest hurdles of e-commerce, which is returns.
Yeah, I think the data that we have is that on average, a product for sale on e-commerce in China has 16 PDPs and an embedded video compared to 4 in the US, and that the return rate on apparel, footwear, and accessories there is 9% versus, let's call it 38.5 in the US. So there is a direct correlation and a direct cost. In this day and age, I do think a lot about the environmental impact and also the impact on retailers' top and bottom lines. And so you're really solving in some ways for a much bigger problem than it like presents on the surface. And that's what I think is really interesting. We actually already have a few questions. So Sean's asking, how does using CGI images help my website's organic SEO?
It's a great question. So, and there are two pillars in that answer. The first one is historically and traditionally, when you index the visuals on your web page, therefore they're referenced in Google's algorithm. So the more images you have on the PDP, the better chance you have to have an SEO ranking. There is even, I believe, a bad ranking, like a penalty if you don't have like visuals. And I think these standards evolve. To my recollection is like 2016 was like 3 images for Google standards in the US. 2018 was like 5. Now you have to have a video. So it is positively engaged. The new thing about CGI and 3D is that I think in 2021 or 2022, I don't remember exactly, but Google positively indexed in the SEO ranking if you were having a 3D model on your webpage of the product. So it's even going further, linking the performance of search to CGI and to 3D.
I mean, one other thing that I often think about is how oftentimes, yes, you want to present yourself differently in different, let's just say, venues. But when that is so different that it's hard to identify the brand, how can like brands and retailers really facilitate consistent visuals across all channels? Because I do find sometimes I'm like, oh, I wouldn't have expected this to be that brand. And you can see it's a challenge. How can Infinite help solve for that?
So it's an amazing question, and I think it's one of the 2 great benefits of CGI. The first one is consistency. The second one is immersion and creating compelling experiences for the shopper. But first of all, as a shopper, I expect to have a consistent, brand experience on all the channels I go shop when I shop for a brand, online, on the website, in the app, on advertising, in store, in Web3 environments, whatever. And this is the beauty of 3D. Since 3D is basically technology, it replaces what was art, and art is subjective from a photo director that can, change. And so it replaces like subjectivity by consistency, by defining de facto parameters of what is my brand. Is it colors? Is it style? Is it types, format, whatever, angles of visual? that I can guarantee that automatically every visual output that gets out of a CGI platform is consistent with my brand DNA. And this, I think, is one of the key things that, first of all, brands and retailers understand, which move them away from just having suppliers free visuals. And they, although they do it with classic photographic pictures, it's very hard to maintain at scale throughout the whole channels.
It's actually really, really interesting. And, so when we start to see, I mean, Alex, when we first met, what I found to be so interesting, and once again, I have a deep background in 3D, was this, that I was, because there'd even been, right, there was a cost at that time, right? We had like rendering farms, and I mean, it was incredibly, it was definitely more expensive than it is now. Can you talk about, right, what is it that, a retailer brand hears and they're like, wow, I have to do that. So that's part one. And then secondly, is we at Coresight have done this massive deep dive into Web3 supply chain, and it can be very overwhelming, right? Because however you look at it, kind of all the nodes, when they understand that this is in some way getting them closer to this, we can call it Commerce 3.0, we can call it the future supply chain. How does that kind of figure into everything that they're thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, great question. So I think that, so retailers understand that, consumers expect more to shop online. Data shows that a lot of, shoppers would not make a purchase if the brand experience that they have is not, immersive enough, personalized enough, or differentiated enough. So they understand that. But now the question is, to your point, is how do they do that? And so they understand that 3D is the solution to build one asset for all their merchandising outputs. But there is a misconception that it costs a ton of money. It's a complete operational changes. It's basically you have to invest millions before you can see the first dollar output. Well, this has been true in the past, is not true anymore. Now, like, what is amazing with 3D and CGI is customers, I mean, brands and retailers can actually save cost on existing photo budget by shifting their whole organization to 3D and CGI while increasing their top line because they're increasing the immersion, the brand performance, and the conversion rate. So this is one of the answer of your question. The second part about supply chain is it has a dramatic impact also in supply chain, because if you replace like logistics, shipping by 3D prototyping, even you can pre-shoot the visual, therefore pre-sale. So you have increasing impact on time to value for retailers and brand using 3D and CGI up to the supply chain.
One other thing, and then we can move on, but I could ask you questions all day, is the CTA, which is the governing body of CS, stated at CS this year that 189 million Americans are gaming, spending on average 24 hours a week. So those are all very, kind of, let's just say from an image perspective, does that raise the bar in terms of what consumers expect when they're shopping? And if so, what are some of the changes that you've seen, either from what the brands and retailers are requesting or from what they're implementing?
So again, amazing, question, and you see that all the time. But just before entering like this like kind of Web3 gaming, shopper expectation, just I'd like to cite, they're not our customers, but it's going to be very interesting. L'Oreal, this multinational brand, for cosmetics, said, before 2020, before COVID, they could use a visual of the product through not the lifetime of the product, but at least a season or a year. And they said that, by shifting digitally completely behaviors with COVID, with shoppers having to shop online, the need of content increased so much that when they published a visual content on social media of a product, it was consumed in one day. So the first thing is we've seen since 2020, even maybe before, but accelerating in 20, an expectation of consumers for more and more visual content, whether it's video, visuals, or what we're saying is kind of 3D, AR, or gaming experiences. So this is the first topic. Second thing I like to say is one of the largest, and I can't name them, but e-commerce player on the planet says that they're not competing with brick and mortar. They're not even competing with other e-commerce companies. They're competing with Netflix. They're competing with the bandwidth. They're competing, sorry, for the bandwidth of the shoppers. So by definition, all of them understand that by creating new types of experience, more engaging, more customized, they're getting more people on their website, stay longer, and de facto converting. Which takes me to your real question, which was, what about AR and gaming environments? Well, gaming environment is the new way people are interacting, spending their time, and de facto tomorrow shopping. So it is increasingly important for brands and retailers to be present in the ecosystem where the consumers are. 50 years ago, they were going to 70 years to store, 50 years ago to malls. They were on the internet, and now they're in video games. So this is a new output of the omni-channel strategy that brands and retailers need to be competing in.
The idea that you are competing with very, let's just say, highly visual content really starts to change the way that that we all think about this. And I think as we kind of look at the next slide, right? Consumers are not really satisfied because anything to me under 10% is just not. It's not even that they're just really like not satisfied with images that they're seeing. And I think that to me, right, that says it all, right? Because if there can be more engaging content, if you also just better understand what you're purchasing, right, which may look amazing, it's just in this 2D, it doesn't look great. And so I think some of the other, some of the other data points that as we look at them, right, we are seeing that retailers and brands are trying this. I think 58% of brands and retailers are currently using kind of interactive product, but it's the method with which they're doing it and the approach. And I think there's a cost issue as well, right, in terms of how they think about this.
Yeah. I mean, again, Sam Walton, but back to the previous slide where you said, 10% of the shoppers are not satisfied with their visual experiences when they shop online. Sam Walton said that the only boss of the organization was the shopper, because if they shop online elsewhere, they would de facto fire everyone. But I think this says it all. Is the first, objective of a brand or a retailer is to create a brand experience, that makes the shopper happy and satisfied to shop online. I mean, to shop within their network. And today, visual, since it's the only interaction with their product, is where they need to invest their money. So to your point, by making this more publicly aware that shoppers are not satisfied with the visual experiences they get on the website, it pushes more and more brands and retailers to invest in new ways of producing this visual, because to your point, until today, the way they were doing it is not satisfactory for the shoppers. Now, to your point, one of the hurdles that our customers, brands and retailers are facing is the misconception that we need to invest, millions for it to work, and it's not true. Again, they CGI and 3D has become so efficient and so focused on ROI that they can directly save money on existing budget by shifting from 2D images to 3D visual content. That is, by the way, amazing, because they shift an expense into an asset, because of the difference of a classic photographic picture that you can basically use once as perishable. You cannot update and customize. When you build a 3D asset, you have unlimited reuse for all your channels, and this is where I think the magic starts to begin.
Hey, that's where we all want to get to. There's a lot of questions in the chat, so let me get to a few of them. It's interesting. It's one I had is that how are 3D models developed, and who does this? But I'm going to add on to that question. Thank you, Melissa. Who in the organization owns it also, and does that change as we move more towards a CGI process?
Sorry, you cut for someone. Can you repeat the question?
So the question from Melissa is, how are 3D models developed, and who does this? And then I'd like to add on to that, who in the organization owns it?
So two very different but very related questions. So 3D modeling today, this is one of the bottleneck of the industry. We at Infinite, we power a network of thousands and thousands of freelancers all around the world that we train, select, and tool in order to provide, the most scalable, what we call 3D digitization of product catalog in the world. So it's not automated yet. It's assisted. AI is helping automation. It's assisting it. And today we digitize thousands and thousands of products per week. So this is how it's done. It's not automated because, if you were to automate it, you would need to receive the physical product in an environment. So it's another very big logistical hurdle, which has an enormous cost impact. So the most efficient way to do it is use networks of freelancers that are trained, tooled, and assisted by technology and AI to create 3D models that then you can reuse everywhere. So this is the first thing. The second thing is who owns that in an organization. This is very dependent on the organization. Generally, the way it works is that it's within the marketing department. They create a CGI department, computer generated imagery department, which owns that. Some more advanced have a full 3D arm, which is great. But I think the biggest lesson to that is at the end of the day, it should not be the retailer who owns that digitization of the product catalog. It should be the suppliers. And this is what we're working on with our customers, is how do you shift that hurdle in terms of cost, bandwidth, people from the retailer to the supplier who should, and we see that in Europe and in the US, a lot of retailers now are imposing their suppliers to provide them directly, the 3D model of their product for the retailer just to use it through CGI on all their channels.
That's a really big idea in terms of, because you can also, one of the things that we've seen in the past is, we look at, an IKEA and Apple and Nike, right? All companies who do a lot of testing and learning. And we've seen other retailers, right, where they would actually get some product in, let's say they'd put it on their digital shelf in June, and they would test it and see kind of what worked the best. And then they would kind of do a fast reorder for holiday. This seems to me to take that in a whole different direction, right? Where you can get the digital image much earlier, right? You can test it and see what's working. So not only can we get better products on our digital shelves, we can also then make sure we're reordering the right products for, the busier holiday seasons. And this could have going back to a significant impact on keeping the right items in stock and delivering a much better experience for the consumer.
Yeah, 100%. I think this is one of the magic of of 3D and CGI is that you can prototype, you can test what works. You can then once you've done that, you can launch pre-sales to be sure that the distributor, the retailer has the audience for the product, which has a massive impact in terms of working capital, because then no expenses, just a digital asset, pre-sale, pre-orders, and then they order the big deal, and then the logistics can come. You don't have you're not stuck with inventory, and at the end of the day, you provide a better experience that you've tested, so your rate of returns de facto dramatically decreases, which is a win-win for the shopper, for the environment, and for the retailer, and even for the suppliers that produces what actually is being sold at the end.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And I think as we move to the next slide, it will help our question from Mark. So Mark said, what are some specific action steps areas to help marketers communicate with AI?
Oh, that's an interesting question. So, AI is a very broad and diverse topic. I think that, the magic of AI combined with CGI is that it's shifting, at least for the visual content, the marketing visual content from art to science. Before AI and CGI, we all trusted amazing art directors that could, in a studio or in a cave, create a beautiful campaign that should work for everyone. And now AI and CGI enable us to A/B test, to create tons of different content, A/B test, then customize to be sure that we're showing the right marketing content to the right audience to ensure performance. The way AI does that is through product recommendation, visual creation, and then, analytics about, how it performs so that it fuels better, recommendation of better visuals to be sure that, again, you provide the best visual experience of the product to the targeted audience to maximize an act of conversion.
That's so interesting. I mean, and then, you look at this number here, right? The 60% of brands and retailers who are planning to invest to automate product visual content online. And, you start to think about what that's doing for an organization to also get them on the same page kind of earlier in the process. And if that's owned by marketing in some cases and merchandising in others, but if some of those conversations are starting to happen much earlier than they would in the past, if we start to think about the unintended benefit for planning, right? So having kind of like the right number and the right location, it really starts to have a huge impact on top and bottom line, which I think are, that really is where we at Coresight, we're trying to de-risk. And when you start to take out risk, right, and you start to have a better visual experience, you understand what you're purchasing, right? This ability to change the relationship for the consumer with the brand and for the retailer to also, right, change some of those relationships with suppliers. There really are a lot of unintended benefits here. Is there anything that what else are you seeing as some of the benefits from those who are investing in CGI? And, with the clients you're working with, when you're sitting down, what are they like, wow, we didn't know it was going to have this impact, or this is different than expected? Because it always, right, there's always that journey from a consumer perspective.
Amazing question. I think the first thing is although it's not for me the biggest, value, it's maybe the first that our customer sees is efficiency. Like, again, cost reduction, especially in difficult times where you have inflation. So cost efficiency is important. Time to value is maybe, as important. How do they reduce the time to market it, sell a product for the turnover to happen more quicker? This is the first thing. And the second thing, in terms of performance, definitely the ability to A/B test, visual. When you think about it, in e-commerce, we A/B test everything: the message, the colors, the button where you put the pixels, everything. The only thing you're not A/B testing is the visual, because until CGI and AI came, you could not. You were stuck with a static, not flexible JPEG that you cannot. Yeah, what if it didn't work? You cannot change the visual of the product. You will not reshoot, relocate. So A/B testing, I think, is very important. And another thing I think that is very important is what we call customization. The ability for a national brand to customize the visual marketing, the visual merchandising, from national to regional to the store, to be sure that what they market or show relates to what they have in store, to relate to the trends, what is on sales and everything is I think one of the biggest value that drives direct, add to cart and average cart value up.
That's really, really helpful. We have a lot of questions, so I just want to be mindful of our time. So I'll just start at the top. How much do retailers spend on average per CGI image, and how much per image with Infinite? From Holly, thank you.
It is a very tough question to answer. And there is no silver bullet magic answer. What I can say is that the statistics show that generally a photo shoot, hiring a photographer, hiring a location, is generally costing $15,000. So it's how many SKUs you can put it, but it's a ton of money. What we see, and I'm not even talking about the benefits when the suppliers provide the 3D model. Let's say the retailer, as it is in 90% of the cases today, takes on the digitization with Infinite, the digitization of the product catalog. They save 50 to 80% on the first year. The second year, It's compounding because you're reusing the asset you already built. So this is in general statistics. Now, it would depend on the types of product, types of visual, types of organization you have, but this is general statistics that we have.
It's interesting because it goes back to, not only are you seeing these huge, savings, but there's also then, right, we're taking out some of the tactical and we're letting companies be more strategic, right? As you talked about, right, you can do more testing which I think is incredibly important. But if we're so caught up in getting like the right image into the right channel, then we're kind of missing some of these derivatives of where, you know, where I think CGI and Infinite is taking us. And that's, I think, been fascinating. So, you know, to wrap up exactly on time, which is amazing. I want to ask one last question. So if, you know, as companies are really looking, right, there is a lot of interest around transparency, traceability, you know, in a Web3 environment. Can you talk about how through CGI and AI, with what you've seen, how can, you know, whether it's inside of an organization, a consumer retailer relationship, a supplier retailer relationship, how does this start to kind of change some of the dynamics? And I know we're still very early on, but to me, it seems like Infinite has an amazing opportunity to be a platform for change. And where are we, and how do you see the future?
Oh, that's a tough question. It's a large one. So the first one, I think, in terms of transparency, traceability, AI and CGI have, I think, three. I mean, there are a ton of them, but what comes to mind is, first of all, compliance wise. You know, now you're shifting, you know, compliance from like going to warehouses where it's very human, very unscalable, to like digital assets that can be directly tested for compliances, you know, automatically with AI. So I think that's the first thing. Internally within the retailers organization, this is amazing because you're replacing like, you know, dozens of like, you know, static images by one 3D asset, and you can trace throughout the whole organization who sees what, who uses, who creates what is performing and not. So that gives you a ton of amazing data within the organization about the efficiency of a product. And then the third thing is, of course, like in terms of like what I call efficiency for like the consumer, I see two things. I see like, you know, there is a new.
Just lost Alex. Mid-sentence on a very, I was like, maybe it's me and it's my Wi-Fi, but I think we lost Alex. Alex actually changed his flight so that he could be available for this, which we very much appreciate. But as you can all see, we're really in the very early stages still of moving to this Web3 supply chain, and having, you know, supply chain is a significant part of my background, and building this new proprietary model that we're going to discuss. We have the honor of discussing at the end of the day on Tuesday at Shop Talk. I think this gives us a preview in terms of what that looks like. So Alex, please.
Yeah, I was disconnected.
It was like
Sorry.
the $10 million question. We're like waiting with bated breath. So
All right.
no, it's this is the you know, kind of the world we're in these days. So, you know, maybe if you can just help us kind of think about kind of where things are and where we're going. I think that you know, we'd really be interested, just as we think about, you know, our own investments and, you know, how to partner in the future as well.
Yeah, well, thanks for that. I think that it's just becoming table stakes, and again, for two main reasons: efficiency. Everyone needs to be more efficient. You could, until now, like as a brand or a retailer, not be very efficient and still succeed. It's not possible now. Everyone needs to be, you know, maximize the output of every dollar spent. First of all, second of all is, you know, as consumers are expecting more differentiation, more experiences. So this is the tsunami that is coming, and I think it's only the beginning. I think that today CGI and AI are used to fulfill like the gaps. You know, I just need more images on my PDP, just because I need my consumer to feel safe when purchasing. But this is only the beginning of creating new, completely omnichannel, immersive, compelling, you know, and customized experience for the shopper, starting with advertising, and then, you know, what in-store, you know, tablets to AR and Web3 gaming environment. So I think it's very exciting about the future. It's only the beginning of how do you leverage 3D assets to create a better brand experience throughout the whole channels.
Great, Alex, thank you so much. This is such an interesting topic, and I feel like we're still so early on in terms of innings, and so looking forward to seeing the impact that Infinite has on the industry. And, you know, as we discussed, right, there's a huge opportunity around, you know, environmentally, looking at ESG in general, but then also as we think about top and bottom line, and we're really starting to de-risk quite a bit in terms of the inventory that retailers and brands are buying. And then as we start to change those relationships, consumer, retailer, supplier, I think there's one technology to have such a huge impact. It's something I always believed in when I was at Li and Fung, and I started to see some of the, very early days, and really where Infinite has taken that, it's very respectable, and looking forward to all your future success. Alex, thanks for joining us. This was great.
Thank you so much, Deborah. Thank you, Coresight. Thank you, everyone. It was an amazing discussion.
Thanks. Take care, everyone. See you at Shop Talk.